What's good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla stock, what's going on with SPY, NVIDIA, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers, and also what's happening to the markets as we have some important news to discuss. I'm going to talk about what the news is saying about Tesla and what the data is suggesting. But before I break anything down all this information, before I get into any more details and break down all this information about Tesla, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks. This offer ends very, very soon. Anyways, now let's break down what's going on in Tesla and the markets. Looking at Tesla right now, we have a very, very nice looking reversal structure. In the morning, Tesla got this big rejection off this, this yellow resistance. It came all the way down to about 212, which is one of the resistance levels we had marked right over here. Then we got this monstrous bounce after that, and this was a result of like technicals and other pieces of news. And then after this happened, Tesla was started to consolidate. It was basically stuck at 220 throughout the entire day. But with this consolidation, there is a very, very good signal for a potential reversal structure. The question is, will Tesla reverse from here? Is Tesla about to push up higher, or is Tesla going to reject? I'll be answering the question very, very briefly. But let's first talk about some news and also some big factors for the markets. Tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day for the whole market. We have retail sales data coming out an hour before the market opens. We have export prices, import prices, and things like that, all before market open. All of that's very minor, might not cause much of a move. But then throughout the day, we have Barr, Bowman, Woods, and a bunch of Fed speakers coming out throughout the day. The first batch of them are coming out around 9 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then later on, we have some manufacturing numbers around 9:15 and just some data throughout the day, which is very, very minor. Then later on, we have Beige and Williams giving a speech around 2 to 3 p.m. So we have a bunch of Fed speakers, some manufacturing numbers throughout the day. Most of the data is very minor, but the bigger thing is going to be, I would say, what the Fed speakers say, because the market is once again just waiting to see any pieces of news about the rate hikes, if there's going to be rate cuts or anything like that. So I'll be paying attention to that. I also want to note something important. I don't truly believe that the Fed speakers are like the main things driving the markets. I think it has more to do with the algorithms driving the markets, but they're using the Fed speakers as an excuse to make the moves they want to make, basically. And I think that that's what's really going on. I'm a firm believer, in the algos that dictate the markets. But it's very important for us to just consider what the Fed speakers are saying, because it could end up affecting how we move. Right? They're just using them as an excuse to do whatever they want to do, and they lose liquidity. But anyways, going back to more data, so don't forget we have manufacturing numbers throughout the day and a bunch of Fed speakers, just a bunch of them throughout the day. For earnings coming out, I went over earnings for the morning. Basically, earnings were very mixed. So Goldman Sachs had good earnings. The rest of them were kind of like okay and very mixed. Guidance was quite strong for Goldman Sachs, but for the others was kind of weak. That's why I would say overall everything was quite mixed. But then for tomorrow, Charles Schwab is going to be the biggest earnings report that's coming out before the market opens. Then we have US Bancorp and just a few others. We also have Discover after the market closes. Everything else is going to be very minor. But Charles Schwab is going to be very important. So we'll be watching this very carefully. So with that being said, guys, watch Charles Schwab before market open. I'll be reporting how it does. That's it for earnings. Earnings are going to kind of like cool off as the week goes on. They're not going to become as significant or as crazy. For more data, the main thing I'm really looking at, because like this is basically the same since the last time I talked about this, market is still quite greedy, kind of like in the middle right now, not extremely greedy, not extremely neutral, kind of just like it's getting close to like the center right here. So we'll see what changes over time and which way this ends up going. Also remember, extreme greed is where market momentum happens to be, but the most important thing is the VIX. Is the VIX going to hold above the 50 moving average, or is this going to be a fake out move? We'll be watching that very carefully as days go on. Now, that's once again going to be a very big factor. But I want to talk about Elon Musk just very briefly and some other pieces of news. I went over all or like most of these headlines in a lot more detail in my earlier videos. So if you want more detail, you could just watch those. But for now, I just want to mention this. Elon Musk wants more control over Tesla, seeking 25% voting power. And that is true technically. He basically mentioned that, and I quote, Musk said that I'm uncomfortable growing Tesla to be a leader in AI and robotics without having 25% voting control. He's basically mentioning that there could be risks for humanity and such. He wants to have a lot of control over it, but he doesn't want to have unlimited control. He still wants to be able to be overturned by other shareholders, so that it's not like a excuse me, it's not like he has unlimited power, right? It's something that he mentioned. Basically, we're still watching some lawsuits that are going on involving like previous payouts and such. We'll be watching for those. Musk is angling for a 25% voting control. He currently has about 13%, but this could get very close to 20% if he does end up exercising some options. So that's worth noting. As of right now, he has a 13% stake, which is basically like half of what he would actually want. And the reason why this caused us to drop was because of the fact that Elon Musk warned that if he doesn't have a big stake, he's going to be incentivized to essentially develop products with different companies, right? Different companies, not put everything into just Tesla. So we'll see if anything changes. We'll see if Musk's stake could increase, which it still could, guys. It really could. So this doesn't guarantee anything. I still believe Tesla will develop robotaxi and such. All these other technologies. But we'll have to see if anything changes as time goes on. But that's just something that's worth noting. If anything, there haven't been any other massive developments in terms of lawsuits yet, so I'll be watching this, see if there are any more developments. This is still making a lot of headlines. Optimus has managed to fold a shirt very, very nicely, very quickly. I showed you guys the video yesterday. On top of that, Uber steps up efforts to get drivers into Teslas. That's once again, it's working with Tesla to encourage its drivers to switch to EVs as a part of its broader goal to be emission free in the US. That is good news because once again, they can't really force any of their drivers to go electric, but they can incentivize them to do so with potential benefits and such. So, with that being said, I mean, with the $2,000 incentive for them to purchase a Tesla, which could be used for that, there are more incentives coming out, and that's good news for them. With this being said, more federal tax cuts could be implemented. There's been some talks about that, but besides that, Uber's working towards this, which is some good news. And I'm seeing lots of headlines coming out that BYD has the C Line oh 07. Great for them. I'm very proud of the company, but don't forget we don't have to compare everything to Tesla. They keep on doing this over and over again. These headlines are just continuing to do this. In my opinion, the C Line oh 07, maybe it's great, maybe it's a great car, maybe it isn't, who knows? But Tesla Model Ys are great cars as well. I don't really like comparing them the way these mainstream articles like to do. And I just want to keep that in the back of our mind. It doesn't really affect Tesla's sales. Tesla will be fine long term. Don't let this get the best of you. Volume was 115 million. Good volume is coming back into Tesla. The short volume is actually starting to drop. We saw a significant drop all the way down to 46%. And on top of this, you guys can see nothing's really changing. The price price ratio should bounce a little bit more. It's starting to bounce just a little bit as Tesla's outperforming the market, showing some strength. Wednesdays tend to be green 48% of the time, so nothing too crazy. And volatility tends to strike Tesla around noon and also early on. But as of recent, for this week, Tesla's been very volatile for the first 1 to 2 hours, and it's been slowing down since. So we'll see if we see something similar tomorrow. But historically, excuse me, guys, around noon and a little bit after is when we see more volatility. Now let's break down the charts. How are things looking? In my opinion, Tesla's looking pretty good right now. It's getting very tight, forming a pennant right over here after getting this bullish breakout. And we're going to be watching to see which levels Tesla breaks at. If Tesla loses 220, you're going to be watching 217.6, 215 as support, and we have critical support around 212. If we lose 212, I expect it to basically come down to 207, by the way. 210 is where we have some support, but 207 is stronger. For resistance, if Tesla starts pushing higher, watch 222.5, 223.5, 225. And then if we break above 225, I think there's going to be potential for it to get very close to 230, basically. It has some resistance at 226.6 and like 227, but I think that it could still get very close to 230. I would still target a bigger push if we break above 225. So how does this look? Honestly, guys, Tesla's looking kind of bullish right now. We have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure. We got this liquidity grab after they triggered the stops over here and also over here, and they tried to push it back up. So we have some reversal signals. I also want to mention that when you look at Tesla on the daily chart looks kind of decent. The 4-hour time frame is looking kind of bullish. We're about to test our 20 EMA. A bullish crossover in the PPO is coming. Tesla is favoring the bulls a bit more for a small temporary bounce. I'm not saying it's going to 250. I'm not saying it's going to 300. Just a temporary bounce, a defensive bounce is being played right now. Good volume is coming in, and we could see Tesla attempt to break out. So watch this wedge very carefully. see if Tesla gets tighter and tighter and tighter, and eventually watch and see if it can break out towards 225 or higher. I believe there's a very good chance it's going to test 225 and eventually get very close to 230. So I favor the bulls a little bit more than the bears right now on Tesla for this super short term, guys, just for the next couple of days. But just because it pushes up, that doesn't mean it's going to hold this level forever. It could always push up and reject later on going into the next couple of days. All right, so for now, look for a little push up. There's a very good chance it's going to try to push up in the morning for 225 plus, maybe even 230. So I'll be watching that just to be safe. For NVIDIA, I want to call out NVIDIA. NVIDIA has a bullish wedge that is forming right over here. Going to be looking for an attempt to try to get to 570. That's going to be our next target of 568 breaks. For support, make sure you watch 565, 562, 560, then 557. For resistance, we're going to be watching 568, 570, 572.5, then eventually 575. In my opinion, with this bullish wedge forming, it could actually push a little bit higher, still favoring the bulls a bit. We could see it get very close to 570, then we'll see how it reacts to that. Aapl is also starting to show life. So Aapl had a head and shoulders. I called this out, right? And that was correct because when you look at Aapl, it actually did sell off. Initially, it did get that sell off. A lot of money could have been made on shorting Aapl right here. We had the left shoulder, the head, the right shoulder, and it came all the way down to about 181. This was a big 6-point drop on Aapl. But here's the thing. Now as this thing is bouncing, we're forming a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure. If it breaks 184.25, look for a push to fill the gap around 185.6. It does favor that. So we have a nice reversal structure. It could try to push up a little bit higher. For support, make sure you watch 182. If we lose 182, 181 is next, and 180 and 178. It could push up higher to fill the gaps. We'll be watching that very, very carefully. So, in my opinion, can Aapl push up higher? Yes, it can. It is still very, very possible. But it's all going to depend on different factors, right? I'm going to be watching to see if we break 184 first, 184.25. For support, we have 182.5 as a very minor support, 182, and then these other levels. My guts tells me with this inverse head and shoulders, it might actually try to push higher and try to fill this gap now. So we have two bullish confluences, which give Aapl a slight edge. I also want to mention that on Aapl, we have the 4 hours still looking quite decent, trying to fight this 20 EMA. If we break the 184s at the 20 EMA, look for a gap fill move in the 185s. So we'll be watching that as well. I also want to mention that on Nvidia, I forgot to mention this about Nvidia. On Nvidia, it's still getting a bullish cross in the PPO, so it still looks kind of strong on this chart as well. There's nothing that shows that this thing is going to tank or reverse just yet. Not yet. Besides that, I think I went over the main ones, except for I want to go over SPY and a few others, just a little bit of time. For the QQQ, thanks to NVIDIA and Aapl and Tesla, this does have potential to push up higher, so there is definitely potential for this. The reason for that is because we're going to be watching very carefully our this wedge that's kind of like forming. We have like a pennant, and then I would say that if we manage to break above 410, basically 410, look for a push for 411. Then we have 412 and 413 above that. For support, you have not only this trend line, but also 408. If we lose 408 in the trend line, we're going to be coming down to 407. That's minor support, nothing too strong. Then we have 405.7 below that. In my opinion, this is looking pretty good, making a nice push to the upside, holding decently. There's a good chance the QQQ might try to push above 410 again. So it does favor the bulls a little bit more. So it's favoring the bulls just slightly more. We'll be watching this very carefully, and we'll see how it ends up going. Besides that, I forgot to mention SPY. Let's talk about SPY, guys. I'm not skipping this, if anything. On SPY, this is not looking as strong as the other tickers out there. At least as of right now, it isn't. It's not like pushing up or showing life like the way the QQQ is, the way Tesla is. This is kind of stationary. You guys can see we hit this resistance, the 477 to 478 areas resistance. We tend to reject off that. And around this 473 to 474 zone, we tend to get bought up. So right now we're at 475 exactly. Watch support at 475. Then we have 474 to 473.8. Then we have 472.9 and 472. If we turn bullish, you want to watch this thing try to get above 476. If it breaks that, we have 477.5 to 480 as 478, excuse me, as resistance. If we break 478, then watch for 480. What do I think this is going to do? Well, here's the thing, guys. Let me just call out something very important. We're still range bound. We've been range bound this whole time. For us to turn really bearish, we need to get a close below 473. That yellow line you see in the bottom, we have to close below 473 to turn bearish. To be bullish, you want to see it close above 477. We're going to be watching the range until then. In my opinion, however, looking at Nvidia and Apple and Tesla, there's a good chance SPY is going to try to push higher for 476 plus. I think we have a gap on SPY. Let me just double check the gap on it. I believe I saw a gap. I just want to double check that. So yeah, I think we have a gap here on the daily. So there's a chance, especially as we're grabbing liquidity down here at the 50 EMA on the 4-hour time frame, that it might actually push up for 476 or so. And I don't know if it's going to break much higher than that. But watch and see a little pop before it continues lower. When is the market going to sell off, though? That's the question. I think approaching March, there's going to be a sell-off coming. But for now, the market is still holding up. And we could see a little pop on SPY, just a temporary pop to 476 before it comes back. So that's what I'm basically seeing on SPY, a little pop first before it kind of continues. So just be very, very careful. Besides that, SoFi is basically looking a little bit weak. We actually broke below the daily 200 EMA after the bank earnings, and we have a head and shoulders like structure on the daily, so it looks kind of bearish. Going to be looking for a test of about 7.2. That's where we have the support, 7.5 and 7.2. On the IWM, we basically have 190 as support. If we lose this, we have this 188 area. 188 is where the daily 50 EMA happens to be. If we bounce off this, we could try to hold up. If we lose this, we turn a bit more bearish. My gut tells me the IWM is going to try to bounce between 188 and 190 for a temporary push to fill the gap back up to 193, and then it might reject later on. So we'll be watching that just to be safe. We might see this thing drop a little bit more than bounce, and it could drop later on anyways. So watch that very carefully. A drop in bounce followed by another drop later on is a real possibility for the IWM. Could test 188 to 190, then bounce temporarily before dropping lower as time goes on. For Microsoft, we look kind of bearish on the daily. A little rejection is very possible. We also have a gap to fill down around 388. Could push higher up towards 394, then come back down, and we might end up making our way back down to 388. So look for a retest of the high, then a rejection back down to 388 as a real possibility. AMD is looking bullish. If it manages to break above 160, watch for 165. If it fails to do so, you're going to be watching for a drop back down to about basically around 153. 154 down here. Then our next level would be like right here at 150. My guts tells me this might try to push a little higher for 165 thanks to Nvidia before it continues. For Netflix, if we lose to 20 EMA at 480, look for a drop towards 473. If we hold this, we're going to be looking for a potential bounce. So we'll be watching that very carefully. Besides that, the VIX on the daily time frame, it gapped up like crazy, but it's barely holding the 50 EMA. If we lose this and we start sinking back down, we have a big drop that could come to fill this gap towards 12.7. This could cause the market, or this could be because of the market potentially pushing. So the VIX does suggest it's a possibility. It depends on if we hold above the 50 EMA or not. If we hold above this EMA, the VIX could push higher for 15 plus, and that would be bearish. If we lose this yellow line and we end up breaking below this, then the market is going to likely be pushing, right? The market would be causing this, of course. So watch that very carefully. My gut is telling me we have a big gap to fill. They might try to trick people and squeeze shorts again, but just to be safe, we'll have to see. The dollar is approaching the daily 200 EMA. So we'll see if it hits 103.6. If it breaks that, it could turn, this could be bearish for the markets. If it kind of fails to do some kind of trade sideways in this range for a bit, this could actually help the market hold up. For Coinbase, it's attempting to bounce. We have a gap to fill up here around 140. If it breaks 135, which is where the 50 EMA happens to be on the daily, watch for 140. If it fails and rejects, 126 is going to be retested. So watch that carefully. My gut does tell me it might try to fill this gap. For Google, we look kind of weak on Google. It's kind of flat right now. I think it might just trade sideways temporarily, but there is going to be a risk of downside later. Google might retest this wick right here at 144 and then make its way back down towards 140 later on. I think we might pop again, trade sideways for some time, then eventually sell off on Google. Amazon's looking kind of weak. If you look at the daily chart, it might test 150.91, might sell off just a little bit more to hit 150.91. We also have a gap to fill around 151, so it might drop just a few points before trying to bounce. So watch that very carefully. Last but not least, on Meta, we're looking kind of bearish on the daily. It could actually sell off. We have a gap down here to fill towards 357. We have to see it lose basically 367 first. If you lose 367, watch for a drop towards 360. If you hold this, it could make an attempt to hold up or even bounce. With that being said, guys, please have a great day. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and I'll see you guys very soon on the next one. Watch Tesla very carefully. There's potential for it to bounce, and we'll see what happens tomorrow morning. Thank you for listening, guys. Have a great day. Remain calm, cool, and collected. Don't forget the market is still going to the moon for the long term, despite what we're seeing throughout the markets. And peace out.